So if you're here wondering whether you need to update to the latest Tab Ultra C Pro from the Tab Ultra C, the short answer is no, I don't think you need to upgrade. I don't think you necessarily need to upgrade. I actually don't think that that's what this latest iteration is about. I just think they've decided not to continue another Tab Ultra C production line given the improvements they've made here. I think that might have been just because the parts weren't available. I just think it wasn't worth them keeping two devices that are really quite similar in this line. I think that you do have to understand that Onyx Boox is a smaller company, a different type of company to your Samsungs or your Apples. They're much more niche. They're going to do much more limited product runs, and that will perhaps be governed by the availability of parts. So when they've got some new processors in, I think they've decided to make a new iteration of the device. Discontinued this, and it sounds like we're saying, well, that's obsolete now. But that isn't really the case, as I hope I'm going to show in this video. And I have addressed that issue in other videos, but here I'm just going to show you some features of both and some differences. I'm going to talk about how I actually find that in use. And honestly, straight away, I can tell you the actual use of the two devices isn't all that different at all. Of course, there are improvements from the Tab Ultra C to the Tab Ultra C Pro, and I will talk about those, but it isn't night and day here. And the first one I'll talk about is the keyboard case. Possibly the most obvious difference. There's certainly a physical difference between the two. And honestly, if you're going to buy one of these devices over one of the other excellent devices that Boox make, then the keyboard case is the reason to do that. They have changed the way that the dock works. So before, they had the pogo pins on the base of the keyboard, which is the physical connection between the tablet and the keyboard case. They had it at the bottom of the device. And people were complaining that they actually got accidental disconnections, and I didn't really get that, but I think that's because they were holding the device and moving it around like this, rather than as I do by just holding it by the base. And you can see I've actually had a disconnection just there, so maybe there is a point to that after all. But that for me certainly wasn't a big issue. This one has the pogo pins attached to the back of the device, which means that they're always connected, and it should be less likely to come out of this connected mode. Then there is also the trackpad. As moving this keyboard back on the device has made room for a trackpad, and the trackpad is just fine. You do need to remember to switch into fast mode to have smooth operation of the cursor there, and you can change this cursor speed in the settings, and I've set it to about 2/3 speed, which I find just fine. That's a nice to have, and for some apps it can be really useful. Of course, what you could have done is carried around some type of wireless mouse or indeed USB-C mouse, and you can still use a mouse on the Tab Ultra C. That would have been totally acceptable. While I was writing this little comparison next tiles, it was really nice to be able to click in different places in the text, but also to click and drag and make new tiles. So that's quite cool. Another benefit of the keyboard case and the keyboard being in a new position is where the magnetic rail is. So there's a magnetic rail here right in the middle of this keyboard, and that means there's a magnet right down the middle here, which gives you, in drawing, it gives you lots of wobble as you go across that point. If I go ahead and make a line, you see the wobble where the rail is. So that's no good. Now there's no magnetic rail at all, so you don't get that wobble in the drawing app. However, there is another disadvantage here. So at the time of writing this, at least, there's no way to disengage the keyboard case when you fold it over this way. So now, unfortunately, I can get accidental key presses here, and you can see I've accidentally brought up the cursor there as well. So it's not just uncomfortable because you can feel the keys on the back, and it's not just heavier because it's in the notebook style and you've got an extra 0.5 kilogram worth of keyboard case. You're also accidentally pressing those keys and the trackpad. I expect that Boox will solve this and bring some type of software update to allow you to disengage the keyboard automatically when it's in portrait mode, for example, but it really should have been considered at launch. Another kind of difference with the keyboard cases is they have used a more premium sort of faux leather on this new Pro case. It does give it a bit more of a premium feeling, and you can now fold it up into various orientations. You can hold that screen up at different angles now. I didn't really find that I didn't like the faux leather here. Can see it's not as premium as some cases, you know, doesn't bear comparison really to the faux leather on the Remarkable case, for example. That's a lot more expensive though. But it is a nice improvement, and they've advertised it as being really fingerprint free. Also, they've improved the keycaps. They're slightly nicer material as well. Although I do find that actually there's more travel on the previous keyboard than there is on this one. I'm going to say it's about an extra 0.5 millimeter of travel on this one, which is not a deal breaker, but I find that I actually prefer typing on the previous keyboard. But both of them are just fine. There's also a slight issue I find with the spacebar, I find that the spacebar just needs quite a solid press, and my normal kind of tap with the thumb just isn't always actuating the spacebar. So that's weird. It's a little bit annoying, but I'm just getting used to it and I'm pressing the spacebar a bit more firmly. So they're both really pleasant places to type on. I wouldn't want to type on them for hours and hours, not like a full-size mechanical keyboard. But both of them are just useful for this use case, which is using the voice recognition and then pausing it and going ahead and making your edits. I've actually found the Google voice typing keyboard to be really useful as well. And actually that works better with the keyboard for edits afterwards, because on the Boox voice typing keyboard, the spacebar actually starts and stops the voice recognition. And for some reason, I found that the voice recognition on the Boox keyboard didn't work whilst it was charging. Weird. I did wonder if the trackpad would get in the way whilst typing. It is quite big, which is nice, and I did think that I would be accidentally hitting it with my thumb or my palms, but I'm not having a whole lot of issues with that, very occasionally. And this trackpad does have gestures, so it's got 2 fingers scroll like you'd expect. It's got 3 fingers up for the home page, and it's got 2 fingers down for back. That's not going to do anything there. It's got 4 fingers for a screenshot. First time trying it to click. Hasn't worked at all, I don't think. So that's my first time trying that, and it hasn't worked. So, but the 3 finger left and right for switching between apps does. That's nice. And you can scroll right and left and up and down, left and right, and you can pinch to zoom in certain apps as well, and click and drag. So it's got your normal range of trackpad gestures. And these can be useful if you simply take the time to learn them, which I haven't yet. The new hinge on the back is very good. It's very stiff, although time will tell whether that does weaken over time. I think it will be okay though. You do need a slightly longer lap now to put this in your lap. Whereas this was actually quite nice in your lap. And lastly, with the keyboard, they've added a little LED in the caps lock, so you know when that's on or off, which is very welcome. Oh yeah, and they have added a few shortcuts. So they've added a shortcut to the Eink Center, a shortcut to split screen, which I really like. So you have to be in an app which supports it. That's really nice to switch there, although I wish it would switch straight back. You can just clear it like that. It's cool. And a search shortcut as well. And I really like having the color temperature shortcuts here on the keyboard and the brightness shortcuts as well. All cool things. That was there on the previous one as well, although they've just moved. I would like to see a shortcut to disable the trackpad as well for those accidental presses, and you can maybe make that a shortcut to disable the keyboard because you're going to turn it over or something. All of this signifies a direction of travel from Boox into a more laptop format, into a PC form factor. I think the future's really bright with that. So other physical features of the Pro model versus the original Tab Ultra C. Firstly, the Pro model is ever so slightly thinner. It's not going to make any difference in your daily use really, but there is sort of 0.6, I think, of a millimeter difference between the two. They've also added volume buttons, which that's welcome, and you can assign them to different functions in the settings menu there as well. You can choose between volume, page turn, or scrolling. But you see, I have set them to page turn for Kindle, and they aren't doing that. So it's not perfect. I don't even think they'll be in a good position for page turn anyway. I don't think they're that important for me, although it is nice to be able to just quickly kill the volume when you move into a place with other people and you don't want to disturb them. And it's a device that 90% of the time anyway, I use with no volume on at all. In the Pro model, they've also reduced the battery size. And although that has reduced the weight slightly and also made it slightly thinner, I think that may prove to have been a poor decision, as the new chips are not, as I was hoping, more friendly on the battery. If anything, they're more power hungry. It's gone from 6,300 milliamp hours to 4,600 milliamp hours. And in my opinion, the reduction in weight, which is 30 grams, is not worth that loss of battery life. You're already committing to carrying around a heavy device here, and that isn't going to make a huge impact on my back muscles. They've also added more RAM, which is of course very welcome. And I find that in use, that just means generally there is more available RAM at any given point, although I'm managing to almost max out that 6 gigs right now. You can still see that in its app switcher at least, there's more free space available. And that does make things like Chrome run a bit more smoothly. And it should make switching between apps that little bit quicker, which you can see there. The camera housing looks slightly different. They've got this kind of clear plastic one on here, which has always been for some reason misaligned. And you've just got this keyed in color plastic, which is now nicely aligned, but I'm pretty sure it's exactly the same or a very similar camera within there. And that camera is perfectly fine for its intended use case, which is scanning documents. The screen is exactly the same. It's the Kaleido free screen, but the higher processing power in the Pro is getting a little bit more out of the Boox Super Refresh technology. Show Chrome on both of them. For some reason, Chrome never shows on the homepage on the older one, but it does on the new one. Let's change off this example of Man United losing and look at the latest example of Man United losing. Why not? Let's blame VAR, of course, and let's make sure we're both in the same settings. So you can see actually you're getting smoother scrolling here on the Pro model there. And then into fast. What the BSR does is it kind of uses a few extra local refreshes to clear up images. It's cleared quicker on the newer device. So actually, yes, the faster processor is having a good effect on the Boox Super Refresh technology. Let's have a look at various other apps then. So go into Notes. No, it feels pretty much exactly the same, but maybe navigating some of the menus might be. Yeah, it feels pretty similar, to be honest. You can see it just gets there slightly quicker actually in that example of downloading and opening a PDF, but it looks identical. I think maybe that first press is a little bit better on the Tab Ultra C Pro though. Yeah, it's a little bit quicker for that first press. And lastly, switching between apps. Yeah, a bit faster on the newer device. And that's what you would expect with that new chipset. But this isn't slow, it's just side by side, you can tell. That's the one reason, if any, to upgrade to the Pro model. The system on chip is just much faster. In terms of the benchmarks, it's night and day. The Tab Ultra C is running a Snapdragon 665 processor. It's got 4 cores, 2 are 2 GHz and 4 which are 1.8 GHz. The Tab Ultra C Pro has a Snapdragon 855 chip with 1 core at 2.8 GHz and 3 at 2.4 GHz and 4 efficiency cores at 1.8 GHz. So that means that the efficiency cores on the Pro are almost as fast as the higher performance cores on the previous generation. I have noticed the difference in the speed moving between apps on the Pro model versus the previous model. And you will benefit from that if you're finding out that you're just maxing out the Tab Ultra C. However, the only reason I'm noticing that is because I'm testing them out side by side. I would say that I've been totally happy with the performance on the Tab Ultra C, totally happy with the speed, and you need to seriously ask yourself if you really do need that extra speed or if you're just happy with it the way it is. So I hope that helps. Let me know in the comments below if you've got any more questions and I'll try and feature them in more content. One more physical thing which is I've not mentioned here, hasn't actually bothered me a lot. People have talked about this like as having a knife edge, not something that's bothered me in the slightest, but they have taken the time to slightly tool down the edge on the newer version because that's what Boox do. They do respond to people's complaints. They do listen to your feedback. And thank you very much. I certainly listen to feedback as well, so please chuck any of it in the comments below.